What's up, everybody? Greetings and salutations. ESK, your friendly neighborhood Spencer man, back with another installment of 10 Things I Like here on the Severe MMA YouTube page. This time focused on UFC Vegas 69. And I know what you're thinking. There's no way someone likes 10 things on this fight card. You would be wrong, sirs and madams. I, as you know, am psycho about this sport. I love all elements of UFC events. And even a card like this, I can find 10 things that pique my interest, that get me excited to sit down on Saturday and watch this fight card. Without any further ado, we're going to get right to it with item number one, Jessica Andrade making a quick return. I've been a big fan of Jessica Andrade fighting since I was at her first UFC event, her first UFC appearance in Seattle against Liz Carmouche when she was a 21-year-old, still had a ponytail, fighting at bantamweight. She only fought once last year. We got that one performance against Amanda Lemos. It was terrific. But it's not enough Andrade for me. And so the fact that she is jumping in here just a few weeks after beating Lauren Murphy in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil at UFC 283 and taking on Erin Blanchfield is terrific. For a guy that loves watching her fight, to get to see her compete twice in 2 months, sign me up. It sets the table for her probably competing 4 times this year. Now, there's the potential that she decides to wait and see what shakes out and maybe she gets a title shot. Fine, I could understand that. But the sense I get from her jumping into this fight is that she kind of knows she needs to stay active. She kind of wants to stay active and is looking to just put on the performances that get her into a position probably in 2 weight classes, because she's got contender status at strawweight right now with that win over Amanda Lemos last year. And so the fact that she's coming back, jumping into a good test, it's certainly a test for her. Erin Blanchfield presents a bunch of challenges. We will get to that momentarily. I love it. I'm all in. Like, getting to see fighters that I enjoy watching compete regularly is exciting to me. And I get that this fight card isn't loaded with them for a lot of people, but there's enough here for me that I'm excited. There's enough here for me that I'm looking forward to this. Jessica Andrade is competing. It's always entertaining. It's always fun. That's plenty to get me started. That's plenty to get me hyped. Item number 2, Erin Blanchfield's big test. As I mentioned, as we talked about on the Severe Preview show, myself, Ian, and Harry, as I talked about yesterday, this is a big challenge for Erin Blanchfield. She goes from facing Taila Santos, who I think was a test, but presented in a similar realm. Going to be a more grappling heavy fight for Erin Blanchfield, and that's where she's comfortable. Now she gets in there with just an absolute marauder who's going to come forward and look to hit you with big power shots and roast your midsection and take advantage of any mistakes you make on the feet. And so it's a big shift in stylistic opponent on Saturday. I love that she stayed in the fight. I love that she continued on and just said, yep, Andrade is fine. Let's go. Main event. What we talked about on the preview show is that this has the potential, in my eyes at least, to be one of those fights where even if Erin Blanchfield loses, her stock continues to go up because she has a good enough showing. If she wins, it's skyrocket. It's fast lane to contendership. I think she then vaults over Manon Fiorot, who's sort of the clubhouse leader right now, with Alexa Grasso getting her shot. Fiorot's next in line. She's nursing or recovering from a knee injury. And so for me, this is the thing I want to see for fighters like Blanchfield. I don't want to see 6, 7, 8 fights before we get to a test like this. I understand that this is taking probably 2 steps instead of just the next step. But with someone that's 23 that has looked as good as she has, let's take those 2 steps. Let's skip a step and just find out. Because if she loses, fine. There's lots of time to reset, to move her back a peg, to get her into a fight with an Andrea Lee or a Viviane Araujo, to just sort of reset and make sure we're not going too far too fast. Make sure that the Molly McCann level isn't just sort of where she's at right now. But you can figure that out after this. And it still doesn't really hurt Erin Blanchfield in any way. But what you do here is give yourself the option, right? It creates a scenario where you may have a surging 23-year-old that just beat a former strawweight champion and flyweight title challenger And those things are important. And I think the UFC at times has been a little reticent to push fighters in this position, to really rush them forward. They'll build a little bit of momentum and then really pull back on the reins. And so I'm happy to see them giving Aaron Blanchfield this kind of opportunity. Item 3, resetting at light heavyweight. I like the fight between Jordan Wright and Zach Pauga. I understand most people probably don't. Jordan Wright hasn't had a lot of success in the UFC. Zach Pauga has had one fight. It was the tough finale at heavyweight against Muhammad Usman, which he lost by knockout in the second round. But each of these guys come into this fight on Saturday from a different division. Jordan Wright is moving up after an unsuccessful run at middleweight. He has fought at light heavyweight in the past. He is 1-0 in the UFC at light heavyweight, as he told me for a story that is up now on UFC.com. And Zach Pauga is coming down. He has always, previous to that fight with Mo Usman, fought at light heavyweight, 5-0 before getting into the Ultimate Fighter. Trains with Elevation Fight Team, works with a good crew, was a guy prior to going into Tough that was on everybody's radar as a future addition to the UFC roster. I just think this is one of those fights. And listen, this certainly isn't anything that's involving contendership or top 15 or anything like that, but it's going to give us a understanding of where each of these guys are at in this division, where they fit right out of the gate in this division. If Jordan Wright is unsuccessful, it probably means his UFC run is over for now. If Zach Pauga is unsuccessful, it means he's got some more work to do. He's only 5-6 fights into his MMA journey after playing pro football, after playing pro rugby. So we'll give him a little bit of time, but it just sets that baseline. And I know we shouldn't have fights that are setting baselines be the co-main event, but this wasn't originally going to be the co-main event, right? This is one of the things I dislike about cards like this, is that everybody forgets that just a couple weeks ago, the UFC decided to move the Marlon Vera, Corey Sandhagen fight from this card to San Antonio next month so it can be in front of an audience. We all love the decision to put that fight, which deserves to be in front of an audience, in San Antonio. But we got to give some grace to a card like this then that loses its main event. Because if Andrade and Blanchfield was the co-main event, we'd all be tripping over ourselves talking about how fantastic this fight card is at the very top, at least. And so let's give it a little grace. Let's give these guys a chance to come out, show us what they can do at light heavyweight, sort of a reset for both of them, and go from there. Item 4, Jim Miller's fighting. Anytime Jim Miller steps into the cage, you are going to hear me say Jim Miller is fighting as one of the 10 things I like. I've been fortunate over my career covering this sport to get to know Jim Miller, to speak with him on many occasions, to speak with many of his contemporaries about him on many occasions. I think, as you've heard me say time and again on this platform, that Jim Miller has done the best job at managing his post-prime career in the UFC of anyone else on the roster. He hit a point where he said, I can't compete with the best in the world. I would argue that it was 10 fights ago against Charles Oliveira. In their rematch, he got Oliveira early. Oliveira got him very quickly later in life. And I think he just said, look, I can't hang with those guys anymore. I can't be in there even with the next tier down. But I still want to compete. I still want to be active. I still enjoy being in the gym. I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm still getting better. So what do I need to do? I need to take a step back. I need to fight some of these young up-and-comers. I need to fight some of these veterans that are looking to rebound and rebuild. And that'll be my role for the next however many years, whatever it takes for me to get to UFC 300, ideally. And he's thrived. He's 6-3 in his last 9 fights. That's a pretty good record. The losses in there are to good fighters, to fighters that probably should beat him and be moving forward. And I just you want to give me a guy that's going to storm out to the cage every time, and you're going to get the absolute best he has to offer on that day. I mean, this is a guy that fought his ass off while battling Lyme disease, unbeknownst to him. He just thought he was getting old. He just thought, I've been doing this for a decade, so I'm starting to break down. I'm starting to get tired. These are the things that happen as you get up into your mid to late 30s. Nah, he had Lyme disease. And once he got that under control, He's had this nice little rebound. I'm always going to be excited to see Jim Miller compete. It's a good fight this weekend against Alexander Hernandez, who steps in on short notice for Mowgli Benitez. It's a compelling fight. It's an important fight for Alex Hernandez, who comes in on consecutive losses, lost just a couple months ago to Billy Quarantillo going down to featherweight. So this is a real important fight for the Great Ape. And it's a good fight for Jim Miller. And I like Jim Miller fights. So shout out to Jim Miller. Item number 5. Another look at Mayra Bueno Silva. Excuse me. If you've paid attention over the months that I've been here, over the number of episodes of this show or others that I've put out, you know that I'm all about just tests, just opportunities, just chances to see people. I talk about it all the time, that the important thing to me is sort of testing hypotheses and testing ideas of where people fit in these divisions, getting practical application of that. And so Mayra Bueno Silva is 2-0 in the UFC bantamweight division, got a good win over Wu Yanan in her debut, submitted Stephanie Egger last time out in that controversial, nobody really saw the finish except for the one judge that was sitting right there. And now she gets Lena Landsberg in what is just, it's a grimy fight, right? Lena Landsberg is a tough, grimy, there's nothing pretty about this fight. It's the kind of fight where if Mayra Bueno Silva can't go out and get it done, that tells us a lot about her. If she can, but it's difficult, that tells us something else. And if she goes out and she steamrolls Lena Landsberg the way that she did Stephanie Egger, that tells us something different entirely. And for me, as somebody that looks at this division and goes, it's pretty wide open beyond a couple names near the top of the division, I'm interested to see what Mayra Bueno Silva can be in this division. Can she be somebody that wins on Saturday to make it 3 straight and gets another step up in competition to where she's facing an Irene Aldana or a Macy Chasson or a Raquel Pennington in the next fight or 2 fights, which then puts her in title contention because we've lost a bunch of names out of this division. We've had a couple go up to featherweight or go up to featherweight for their next fight. We've got a bunch of tenured veterans that really aren't going anywhere beyond where they're at right now. And so you give me a 31-year-old that's had some success, that's looked good in her last 2 fights, give her a chance to get another win. I'm in. I'm interested. I'm paying attention because it's going to have a ripple effect down the road. And that's the one thing that I think we overlook with cards like this. I understand that there's not a ton of big names, that there's a bunch of people coming off losses or making their debuts, whatever the case may be. It doesn't mean that these results aren't still going to have ramifications down the road. They may not be top end of the division ramifications. They may just be in the middle of some of these weight classes. But those things matter. At least they matter to me. And so I'm excited to see Mayra Bueno Silva. I'm excited to see these first 5 things, and I'm excited for these next 5. Number 6, instant test for Hussein Ashkabov. So as I talked about on Wednesday on One Thing, don't really know what to expect from Ashkabov. He's 23-0, 27 years old, looks the part of an intriguing prospect, right? That kind of record, tons of finishes, has trained with good teams and good people in the past at ATT, at Bang Tao, looks the part. But it's so hard to tell these days. It's so difficult to understand whether someone like Ashkabov is fighting good competition or just posting big numbers against absolute trash. On Saturday night, he steps in with Jamal Emmers, who is 1-2 in the UFC, but is the kind of guy that has been around long enough that I know how good he is. I know what it takes to beat Jamal Emmers. Jamal Emmers, if you go back and look, beat Corey Sandhagen early in his career, fought in RFA when it was still Resurrection Fighting Alliance before it and LFC merged to create the LFA. That's how long Jamal Emmers has been around. 33-year-old guy, good wrestler, little pop in his hands, going to be a good test for the incoming newcomer. And as we said on the preview show, this is one of those situations, again, kind of similar to Bueno Silva, where the result has a potential to lead us down any number of roads. So if he comes out and looks great, that's one thing. That's how you go out and smash through Jamal Emmers on Saturday. I'm buying my ticket for the bandwagon, as I said yesterday, and I will welcome the rest of you aboard when you want to get here. You go out and struggle, okay, that tells me something else. You go out and lose, that tells me you were beating cans. Or at least you need a chance to reset here because he has been off for almost 3 years. I think we're a month shy of 3 years when he steps in the cage on Saturday. And so let's just see. These are the things I like. We don't give the UFC credit enough for some of these assignments, right? It'd be real easy to slow play Ashkabov and get him in there with a Dana White Contender Series alum, get him in there with some veteran that's on a real losing streak and looks to be towards the end of the line, and just give him a layup. Let him go out there and just smash. Instead, he's facing Jamal Emmers. Now, Emmers is coming back off a knee injury, hasn't fought in a year and a piece. Fine, but it's a tough test, and I want to see how Ashkabov does. Item 7. One more shot for AJ Fletcher. Listen, as the guy that covers the Contender Series, it's tough sometimes to watch these events and see people that looked really great on the show come in and struggle early on in their UFC careers. And that's AJ Fletcher. Thus far, it hasn't been the best. 0-2. Sorry, I'm going to pull up his record here because I keep saying 0-2, but I think it was a draw with Angelosa. So bear with me momentarily. This is live video on the fly. It is 0-2. He did lose the fight to Angelosa. I am correct. So it's 0-2. It's Matt Semmelsberger. It's Angelosa in a fight of a battle of attrition after just running through people. So this is sort of tethered to that Ashkabov point, right? Looks great on the regional circuit, looks great on Contender Series, but is it level of competition? Is it just having a good night? What is it? So far, it looks like it's been level of competition. Now, I would argue that fighting Matt Semmelsberger in your debut is a bit too big of a test for a guy like AJ Fletcher that had 9 fights coming into the UFC. But now he gets an opportunity and he gets a fight here that is 100% winnable. This is the you have to win this fight against Themba Gorimbo, excuse me. And if he can't, then it's just going to be the end of the line in the UFC for AJ Fletcher, because I don't think, and I know I talked about it a little bit yesterday, I don't think he's able to make 55. He's just a fire hydrant of a human being. And so this is the one you got to go out and win. This is the one where you've got to look like the guy that smashed through Leonardo Damiani on Contender Series. And maybe you've got to be the guy that has learned from these 2 fights where you've gotten tired and you haven't been able to put guys away in the early stages, that you need to pull back a little bit and rein it in a little bit. And so we'll see. I'm always open to giving people opportunities. You go 2 decisions against 2 solid fighters. Fine. Let's give you that step back. He's getting it here. Got to win this one, though. Item number 8. And I went out of order here, and I'm mad at myself. Second chance for Evan Elder. So a couple of years ago, David Onama debuted up in weight class against Mason Jones at lightweight and lost the fight, but gave Mason Jones a good fight. Sort of everybody that I know that pays attention to prospects, sort of long range focusing on people, kind of circled the name and was like, let me just wait and see what happens when David Onama moves back down to featherweight. Went down, featherweight debut, knocks out Gabriel Benitez in the first round, and we all go, okay, we got ourselves a prospect. Now, it hasn't been the best since, but we got that moment. Last year, Christian Rodriguez debuted up in weight against Jonathan Pierce. So he fought up at featherweight. He's a natural bantamweight. Same sort of thing. Gave JSP some troubles, and JSP has looked really good since being at featherweight. Gave him some troubles, moves down, gets a fight against a fellow Contender Series alum, chokes him out real quick. Away we go. This kind of feels like the same thing for Evan Elder. So he's a kid that trains at Kill Cliff FC and gets rave reviews from the people that are there. Now, understandably, coaches and fighters and training partners are all going to say, nah, my guy's great. but he's looked the part on the regional circuit thus far. Made his promotional debut on really short notice, up a division at welterweight against Preston Parsons. And so the reason I'm interested and I'm intrigued is because that's an even bigger gap to go up and deal with, right? The difference between lightweight and welterweight is a little more significant, both in terms of the actual number of weight, but also more specifically, the physicality and the size of people. Preston Parsons is a big, thick, full human being at welterweight. And Evan Elder is a little bit undersized to compete at that division. It's why he competes at lightweight. And so this weekend, he gets Nazim Sadikov, a Sarah Longo fight team member, coming off Contender Series. It's a second chance, and I just want to see if there's a little bit of that David Onama, Christian Rodriguez there for Evan Elder. He looked okay in that fight against Preston Parsons. He looked like a guy that took a fight on short notice, that has limited experience, and was fighting up a division. He held his own, though. He went the distance. He didn't get finished. He didn't get bombed on. It wasn't anything like that. So let's just see what he can do now that he gets a full camp, now that he gets to reset back to his weight class, now that he gets a fellow debuting fighter. We'll see what happens. Item 9, Clayton Carpenter's debut. As the guy that covers the Contender Series and recaps all the events, excuse me. I don't know why I did that. I have a mute button right here. For the UFC, I've enjoyed watching sort of these athletes get the opportunity to shine on the Contender Series, earn their way into the UFC, and then watch them and track them as they go forward. Carpenter is somebody that last year kind of impressed me a little bit. Not necessarily with his actual performance, but with the intangible things. He got banged on a little bit in the first round against Edgar Charez, but he weathered the storm and he figured it out, and he found a way to win that fight. Rallied back, wins a decision, shows up with Laura Sanko. She does the interview. She's like, "What'd you think? Did you think you were going to get your hand raised?" All of that stuff. And he's just like, "Yeah, I did. This is what I do." It's a little dickish, but I kind of like it. And so he comes from the MMA Lab, which is a team that I respect and admire a great deal for not only the people that are there, John Crouch, Ben Henderson, that whole group, but also the way they've cultivated careers for some of these young athletes through their amateur program, through all of their training ranks, to where these athletes come along over a number of years. And if you talk to Crouch, if you talk to Ben, if you talk to some of the fighters, you can go back 2-3 years and they're shouting out guys that are great in the room and really helping them develop and come forward, that then get to a point where they're fighting in the UFC or fighting in bigger promotions and having success. I will never forget several years before Drakkar Klose got into the UFC, talking to John Crouch about Ben and about some of the people in the room and who are the people that really are on the come up. And Drakkar was the guy that he mentioned. Now, obviously, the name stands out. Drakkar Klose is a very easy name to remember. But he went out and he had some success on the regional circuit and he showed up in the UFC and he's been a stalwart there ever since. And I'm just curious to see if Clayton Carpenter can follow that sort of similar trajectory. I don't think it's necessarily going to be as good or as quick as Drakkar Klose's rise was. It feels a little more Mario Batista to me. Come in little early in your career, still got some stuff to work on, but the foundation is there. The raw materials are there. Let's see what he can do against Juan Camilo Renderos in the opener on Saturday. Last one, item number 10, tidy little 11 fight card. I know it probably seems like a cop-out to some of you, but listen, an 11 fight card, 5.5 hours, depending on when we start. I haven't looked up the start time yet. If we start at 2 o'clock, we start at 3 o'clock, bang this thing out. We're out of here by 9 p.m. Pacific time, kick back and watch a couple shows, have a nice bottle of something, relax. We should be able to run through this card relatively quickly. And I know that people are going to say, "Oh, well, UFC pacing," and they're going to drag this out. I mean, I don't think there's going to be time. I would imagine that this card will be lined up so that we have 2 hours for the prelims, for the 6 prelims, and then 3 hours on television for me on television in terms of the main card. And so a 5-hour show, just in and out, close with a great main event, close with something I'm really interested in, a few things that I'm looking forward to. I can think of worse ways to spend my Saturday, guys. I hope you feel the same. I hope you find some stuff you like on this fight card. I hope you've enjoyed the program today. Jump in tomorrow. Myself and Ian O'Neill, the Severe Picks and Plays. We will try to get things moving in the right direction on the wagering side of things. The picks haven't been bad, but we'll try to really step things up on the wagering side of things. It's a tough card. There's not a lot of odds that either of us like, but I'm sure we'll find something. Check out everything on the Severe MMA website and on the YouTube page here. There's been a ton of great content from Harry and Andy and everybody, a bunch of interviews, bunch of stuff on the website about the IMAFs that are going on. Quilch is doing a great job covering that for us. Check out the Patreon, SevereMMA.com/pints. Loads of great stuff there. We love you. We appreciate you. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe down below, and we'll see you soon.